Hey, where are the white women at? Alpha Alpha 5, Juliet Whiskey, James in Spring, Texas. Heard my power up there. Something. So yeah, I'm looking at adding a second antenna. I've got a 2 meter, 70 centimeter antenna on the back of the house for my voice station, and it's kind of doing double duty right now, voice, and then I flip it over to APRS whenever I'm not at home, and the iGate, and also I get a kick out of the on pinpoint, see how propagation is. And so I was curious about putting a second antenna on the back of the house, but kind of dedicating that one to APRS, and then also I can use that one for sending packet emails. I've just learned how to do packet here in the last month and having a lot of fun with that. And I'm trying to figure out how far I need to space my antennas apart to make sure I don't burn up both my radios. Because I know you can't have them too close, but I'm not really sure what the best guidance is for how far apart those two antennas need to be.
Okay, thanks for that. We've had that question, although it's probably been quite some time. Probably a year since we've had that question on this net. I'm going to make an assumption here, James, that you're going to space these antennas horizontally. Which is not the best way. Vertically is the best way. You can get away with much less vertically. But horizontally, yeah, that's going to be kind of an issue for you. But we'll pass it around here and see. Starting with Ron, WB6IAG.
Yeah, good evening, WB6IAG. Well, as Steve indicated, the horizontal configuration for a vertical antenna is as much as possible. And due to the reason you indicated that the one antenna can pick up the RF radiation from the transmitting antenna and could burn out the front end of the receiver. Even if it's off, you could have enough voltage built up there at the end of the coax at the radio to burn up the set front end or the diode switching, whatever. Like you indicated, the vertical is the best. The vertical antennas pretty much do not radiate straight up or straight down. So that's why you'll see them on mass stacked one above the other. It depends on the band. Are we talking both in a similar band, or what are the two frequencies? You might have mentioned it, but you might have mentioned it again. What frequencies are we talking about here that you want to spread out with two antennas?
Yeah, so I'm looking to do, I do 2 meter, 70 centimeters, primarily as voice, and then for my, packet station, I'm guessing it's probably going to be primarily 2 meters, because that seems to be what, that's where APRS lives, obviously, and then most of the packet bundling, gateways and meters and stuff are on 2 meters, although there are some 70 centimeters.
Scanning begin.
And yeah, I am going to be spacing horizontally.
All right. You want to keep the descents down, because if one's on and the other one transmits, you could get noise back into the two-way radio. I would suggest the opposite ends of the house if possible. It's just a case that the RF could travel across it and desense the unused radio, or the one you're talking on, like you're monitoring on one, and the packet.
I notice we don't have a signal indicator at all. And none of that seems to work on this radio. These volume indicators don't work. These don't work.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
We have no S meter.
I don't have quite that much on the back of my house, but I guess I could come around the side of my house. I'm trying my best to keep it, kind of, out of the view from the front of the house, so I can, we've got the HOA here that can be a little irritating, I guess would be the best way to put it. Plus, I don't clean the house often enough. My neighbor's house might block several signals, but yeah, that you make a really good point, though. I don't want to be. I didn't even think about the descents. I was thinking more about just from from the standpoint of not wanting to burn out the radio. But so you're saying if I'm under that 40 feet and a packet were to fire off, I might hear it on the other radio.
Of course you'd hear it.
Here's the actual packet, but what it does is it desenses the receiver of the radio that you're trying to use. So the noise floor would go up, possibly, and you could hear maybe something in there, but it'd be like wideband noise, and it's like the squelch going on higher, not necessarily the actual packet information. Do you have your dual band on a mast of any sort?
I've got it on like a very small little mast. My dual band is the Diamond X300 NA. It's about a 10-foot.
I sure would like to know what's up with the
On the back of my house.
meter on this.
Like the 2-meter portion for both of them there, then you could probably get away with it at half wavelength lower above the dual band, or below the dual band, on a little side arm sticking out a little bit. But that doesn't sound like you got much to work with there. So your best friend in your case is the physical separation around it. And if the chimney's in the way, that's between the two, that's good. the more blockage, a tree or a building or something in between the two would give you more isolation. Good luck with that. Back to you, Steve, WB6IAG.
Good evening. The time is 8 p.m.
All right, N5CUA net control. And I just did some quick math here because we wanted to make sure we did. He was using both bands. 144.39 times 3 is 433.17. So that won't cause a problem on UHF. But remember this: power is power. So there's a power-only standpoint. There's no difference in 50 watts at 2 meters versus 50 watts at 70 centimeters. Now, modern radios use a diode switch in there that will probably keep that power out of the UHF receiver. I'm thinking, hoping maybe it will. But it may, well, let's see, we'll get David's opinion on this. That may only happen on transmit. So, yeah, he might still be at an issue if they're too close together, even though they're on different bands. If he's transmit EPRS, his iGate, and listening on 70 centimeters. The old radios used a mechanical relay, and that was fine because it switched back and forth, and it, transmit and receive. But, yeah, everything now is pretty much diode controlled. David, what are your thoughts on that?
K4FXC. Well, it's isolating it so that one transmitter does not desense another receiver is going to be a challenge with even like 40 or 50 feet of spacing, I would think. In my experience with ham grade radios, at least, there is a interesting separation chart on the Repeater Builder website. Don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's repeater-builder.com/antenna/separation.html is a web page. So that's repeater dash, like a minus sign, repeater-builder.com/antenna/separation.html. And it shows the difference between vertical and horizontal separation for the isolation that you get. For example, to get 50 dB of isolation, reset.
Welcome to the wind system. PL123.
Yeah, let my ID get done there. To get 50 dB of isolation between the two antennas, vertically speaking, you only need about 22 feet of vertical separation between them, but horizontally, you need about 300 feet. So that gives you an idea of the difference. I've had problems, even with a mast-mounted VHF, UHF antenna behind the house and desensing, a ham-grade VHF, UHF radio with a HT in the house. So it's going to be a little bit challenging, perhaps, for descent. But yeah, certainly if you get 40 or 50 feet or so apart from the antennas, I wouldn't think at that distance you would have an issue with the transmitter damaging the receiver in the other radio, as long as you're not running more than 30 watts or 20 watts or as low power as practical, the transmitter. Now, for the VHF and UHF scenario, that's actually quite easy, because you can use a diplexer, which is basically just a low-pass filter and a high-pass filter. So you can put a low-pass filter on the VHF side and a high-pass filter on the UHF side, and you can keep the two isolated from one another quite effectively, so that you can be using UHF and VHF at the same time, no problem. And that will work even between differing antennas if you had dual-band antennas, and like you had two radios on UHF on one of them and VHF on another, just diplexers, which are, again, just filters, can isolate them pretty good, I would think. But it's a challenge if you have them close together, particularly horizontally spaced. And if you run high power, like an amplifier or something, then you certainly have to worry about possibly damaging the receiver and the other radio for sure. But anyway, few thoughts, K4FXC.
One quickie comment, Steve.
Quickie, go ahead.
Yeah, whatever VHF frequency you're using, I think it was on the single radio, take the third harmonic, multiply that frequency by 3, and you're going to have RF noise in the UHF band at the third harmonic. So that's, as long as you're not trying to use that frequency on UHF, it won't be much of a problem either. But multiply up the frequency times 3, and that gives you the third harmonic, which radios will put out. And that's the frequency you might not be able to use on UHF, okay?
Okay, yeah, that all that makes a lot of sense. I'm looking at the repeater builder, that site right now, and it is, it is staggering the difference in those two charts. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe doing two radios and diplexer, and have a diplexer or duplexer, one where I can share both radios onto one antenna. Maybe that's going to be the most elegant solution in this endeavor.
Well, Ron, do you want to tell him, or do you want me to tell him about diplexer versus duplexer?
No, you're waiting for that one, Steve. Go ahead. And good evening. WB6IAG listening out.
Okay, yeah, Ron and I have this thing about terminology and misuse of it, so we're 100% in agreement. The diplexer is two different bands, and a duplexer is in band. So yeah, you use a duplexer on a 2-meter repeater or a 70-centimeter repeater to separate the 70-centimeter receive frequency from the 70-centimeter transmit frequency. And same thing over on 2 meters and 6 meters, 10 meters. But a diplexer is two different bands. So there you go. Yeah. And another thing you could do, since your other radio is only dedicated to APRS, and I assume you said iGate, so I'm assuming you're running on 144.39. And you don't want to buy one of these new because they're too cost prohibitive. You might find one at a swap tailgate sale or a Hamfest. Is a filter, a notch filter, to get rid of one and tune it up to 144.39. Make sure it's good for that range of VHF, and notch out 144.39 on your other radio's antenna for the receive there. Just notch that out. It'll pass everything else. It'll notch that one frequency out.
So I think he's talking about a cavity filter.
And that might help with that as well. With descents and power overloading the front end of the receiver as well. Just thinking outside the box here. Not necessarily the best or cheapest solution, but it would be one that might work. So. All right, let's go to Joe, K0NEB, and we'll wrap things up for tonight, I think. But Joe, thanks for being there tonight, and over to you.
Welcome to the Wind.
This is K0NEB, and